Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Independent Artists Unite Song Series. This is super cool. Today, we're going from Denmark all the way to Israel to talk to Vadim from Weary Smiles about his song Invisible Men. Vadim, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
I'm wondering, maybe we could just start off. What was it like? You grew up in Israel as well, I assume.
Well, I was born in the Soviet Union. I grew up in Israel, but I came when I was 10. So
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
can I can divide a little bit my childhood between the Soviet Union,
Wow.
which was very different from Israel, and Israel is much better. Most of my since I was 10 until now, I'm in Israel. So it's a very interesting place, mixing the West and the East. Of course, very
Yeah.
Western oriented, but still in the Middle East with its Middle Eastern mentality a lot of time, and of course all sorts of cultural influences and elements as well.
Yeah, but I mean, 10 years old, that was early enough to be already into music and stuff, right? In the Soviet Union?
Yes, yes.
What kind of music did you listen to as a kid there?
Well, the first band I was really into was a band called Kino. It was led by the late Victor Tsoi. He died when he was 28 in 1990. When I was six, I think, he was really big, and he made a sort of a Soviet 80s rock, and he was
Uh,
huge. And his band were really huge. He was the first rock god that Soviet Union had, and I listened to him through and through. I was only six, but I still listened to him. My cousins got me the cassettes. If you remember, there was the huge tapes back then,
oh,
and
yeah, 8-track tape?
yes,
Yeah.
and I listened to him really all of his albums. I was really a fan. I remember being sincerely sad when he died. I was 9. He died in a car crash. He died young, like a superstar rock star should.
Yeah.
And he made a very interesting music. I thought this is a Soviet rock. He made very smart music, especially lyrics wise, and I really got connected to that. And when I came to Israel, I was 10. Of course, nobody was into him, and Israel is also the whole planet was way bigger back in 1991. It
Mm.
wasn't such a small global village, and in order to get new music, I had to rely on my older cousins, and they got me into heavy metal very soon, very quickly, and very hard. And I'm
Yeah.
thankful for that. And only in my high school years, I got into the music I'm actually making, into post punk. I was, I think, 16. I bought Disintegration by The Cure,
No, yeah.
and this
I love that
simply,
album.
it really bought me over, conquered me. I was
Mm,
really into that album, and besides being so overwhelmed, I also was very surprised. I was surprised
mm.
with the fact that the Russian icons I was listening to sounded very similar to The Cure. And let's politely say they were very inspired by and influenced by those guys.
Okay.
And it kind of, brought me home, really brought me home. And now I understand that sort of post-punk Soviet rock was actually post-punk, like The Cure.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. And then and then was it when you started listening to The Cure and stuff that you like picked up a guitar for the first time, or when did that happen? When you thought about
Actually,
making your own music?
uh, I went to a music school when I was a good, Jewish little boy. I went to play the piano, and
Mm-hmm.
when I was in my teens, I picked my first classical guitar, and I was in a band. We formed a band in high school, like pretty much everyone. We had a metal band, and it was really small, really modest, but very fun.
Mm.
And I was doing only the singing and the writing of some lyrics. And actually, I picked my guitar, my first electric guitar, only 3 years ago during the pandemic, during the COVID lockdown. I had so much time on
Oh,
my
interesting.
hand.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I sat at home and I said, "Hey, God gives you lemons. Let's make lemonade out of it. Let's pursue all the things that there are no time during the rat race that we live in.
I've heard it's so interesting doing this show now. I think this is the 19th episode I've done of the show. And that story about the pandemic and lockdown situations comes up so much. It really was the genesis of a lot of bands, where people said, hey, let's finally do this thing or whatever, or individuals like yourself who just decided, hey, let me use this time wisely. So that's a very strange thing that horrible situation gave rise to this huge creative burst.
Yes, but it's a little bit of a cliche talking about making lemonades out of lemons. But I think this was the case. It also for me was the first time I could spend so much time with my little girls. I didn't have the time to spend with. So actually, I'm looking back on it, and it was not for me. It was not that horrible. Actually, I understand it was a horrible place and a time for everyone. But somehow, I personally was able to seek and find the positive sides of that in among the really big loads of crap it unloaded on the world.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I think, but also I think we were very fortunate. I know in Denmark,
Exactly.
where they rolled out a vaccine very quickly, and Israel was even before Denmark, I believe.
Yes.
You guys were not messing around when it came to the vaccine.
Actually, yes, right. You're correct.
Yeah. So let's get into Invisible Men. Like you said, I mean, to me, when I was listening to it, it is totally post-punk. It is like a throwback to those. I mean, I'm like, I lived through post-punk the first time, So when I hear it,
So
sometimes it's like when I hear it, I don't even know if I can describe it. But when I hear it, I go, yeah,
That's the vibe.
yeah, it's in there. It's in there. But I asked you if maybe you would read the lyrics to Invisible Men too, because I kind of have a hunch of what it's about, but I wanted you to read the lyrics and get into that a little bit about what it's about.
Sure, with pleasure.
Because you said in your bio on Spotify, you're also, I mean, they started off as poems, is that right? Your songs?
Yes. If I have a moment to elaborate on that,
Yeah.
I'm making music only a few years, but if anything, I'm a poet. I write poetry for more than 2 decades, and I was especially fruitful when I was way younger, and I wrote a lot of poems. I don't know, I can say if they were any good or not, but they were plenty. And when I wrote them, at least some of them, I was as if writing lyrics to future songs. So I knew that or hoped that one day these poems would become songs. But also I think they can stand alone. I have published them as poems, as written art, standalones as well, and this how it started for me.
Yeah.
The whole creative process starts with words, with the lyrics.
Okay.
So yes, with much pleasure, I'll read it.
Oh, great.
Invisible tears of invisible men fall on the ground and make a noise no one hears. Invisible homes on invisible streets burn to the ground with fire and sin. Darkness is hiding the story of those, all who were doomed by the light. The devil set traps of an invisible kind, unseen to none, none shall pass. Silent are scream of invisible men, minors the pain of those men. Darkness is hiding the story of those, all who were doomed by the light. No one shall cry for invisible men, none but the candle that dies with the dawn. No one shall smile in invisible homes, no one but death in the fire. Are we so evil or blind, maybe dumb? Are we so weak to deny? Darkness is hiding the story of those, all who were doomed by the light.
Wow. Beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm assuming that it has a big influence on you as an artist, as a writer, of the the conflict that surrounds you without getting too political.
No, it's okay. It is part of our reality.
Yeah.
It is a more complicated part of our reality than it might look, but it is, of course, a part of it. I must say this song is not about that.
Okay.
Not about that at all. I could, of course, elaborate on it as well. But I did write. I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot when I in the years 2000 to 2003, 4. These were, I think, my most fruitful years, and I wrote a lot about the conflict. A lot about there were a lot of terrorist attacks. I knew people who got hurt. I knew places. I missed like a bus that exploded by a few moments, by a few minutes. So, I mean, it was a part. It was a part of our reality. This is a complicated reality. I'm not saying I'm not trying to draw a really clear picture about it, but I wrote a lot about the war. War, our conflict, our war, and our struggle, and the wars in general. Because I think suffering is suffering. Eventually, suffering is universal. Grief is universal. These are so fundamental human feelings and human aspects that are universal to everyone. Eventually, everyone feels.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into Invisible Men specifically. What was the inspiration for that when you sat down to write the poem?
I want to go back just one step in order to
oh yeah, sure,
answer this. When it took me a lot of years to start writing about myself, to things that happened to me, and in my first years, I was writing about things that I saw, that I liked or didn't like in our reality, and I try to describe it or maybe critique it, maybe praise it. But these are not things that had to do with me. It's not like I was hurt by someone or fell in love with someone or something like that. And Invisible Man is about the people, is about the lonely people in our society, the people who are neglected, who are rejected by our societies. And the thing is, of course, we as human beings, we care about our inner circle, but our closer circle. We have our home base. Our home base, we cannot be loved by all the world, and we cannot love the whole world equally. We have our families, our friends. Of course, they get all the attention. It is normal. But each and every one of us have their friends, their home base. And when we go home, these people see us as human beings, as meaningful and special human beings. And there are people who do not have this privilege, this inner circle of friends or family or even acquaintances, for all kinds of reasons. And they eventually, if nobody sees you, you're invisible. That's the message. And also say a few times in this poem that the darkness is hiding the stories of those all who were doomed by the light. I mean, we don't know why are people doomed by the light. You know, there is a Hebrew saying that for the people who are in the light, it's very difficult to see those in the darkness. And of course, when you live your life, your hopefully normal, good life, you focus on yourself and focus on the good things you do. You naturally don't look for other things, and you are concentrated on your life. And there are reasons why people go into the darkness. Maybe they're not cool enough. Maybe they're not pretty enough. Maybe they're not conformist enough. Or maybe they've done something wrong and their families or society has rejected them. I don't know. But eventually, there are people in the darkness, and we, the people in the light, it's very hard for us to see us because of physics. That's how optics work. And also because we do not look there. And eventually, as societies, it was written as a protest song, as a critical song to our Western societies. That eventually, society is measured upon its the way it treats the weakest members. the
Yeah.
sick.
Where's
Yeah,
that quote from? I was just thinking of that when you said that. The
I must say
society.
I don't know.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know,
that's a
but I
great
cannot
quote. Yeah.
agree more with it. I cannot agree more with it. The way they treat
Yeah.
our young, very young, the kids, the elderly,
Mhm.
animals, sick people, handicapped. This is how the society is measured. If we treat
Yeah.
them in any decency, or we neglect them and throw them to the sidewalk. This is
Mm.
so. I think that the Western societies, the way they're built, we live in some sort of a rat race, the pursuit of happiness, and
Mm.
our personal happiness, and everyone is so self-centered, and like everybody get out of my way. I'm on my way to be happy, and we kind of don't look to the sides eventually,
Mm.
or at least not all of us, not all of the time. And I
Yeah.
think it's important. I think it is important to see, or at least to know, to recognize the fact that there are people in the darkness, and there are people who are not seen, and they're invisible, but they have feelings, they hurt, they love, they do all the things the other people do. But it's like with that tree that falls in the forest and no one hears. And the same things.
Mm.
These are people that are totally ignored, but to themselves, that these people are real. They're very real, very feeling the same way like we do, hurting, loving, everything else.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's powerful. Love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I talk a lot about these things or listen a lot about it because my partner works at a shelter for homeless sex workers.
Mm,
And I was really thinking about those women that she echoes that same thing, where they the way they act, the way they, where really they're all drug addicted, and it's even a which I didn't even know there were places like this where they don't try to help them, they just want to harm reduction, try
mhm.
to make things a little safe, get them a shower, get them change clothes and stuff. But yeah, she's a lot of stories. She has they act in such a way that it's just like they're trying to hear themselves that they're even exist. Their behavior can be quite erratic, and of course they have a lot of mental health problems and drug addiction and stuff like that. But a lot of this stuff is just being seen, being seen as an actual person, like
Yes.
someone actually listening to them, which is what my partner does. Is much of her job is listening to someone, even if they're talking complete gibberish. They notice that you're there listening to them.
I can very relate to what you're saying, and a lot to relate a lot to this, and I think she's doing really like a saint's job, really.
Yeah, that's what I always say to her too. I don't know how she does it, frankly, but I'm always like, I'm happy that there are people in the world that do that stuff, but I'm not sure I could do it.
It's not for
But
everyone, that's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. So what's do you have certain goals in mind with your music, or are you just trying to put out these singles every once in a while, or what's your idea? Do you have
Hopefully,
a game plan?
I probably won't be a headliner anytime soon. I don't have a goal to conquer the world.
Yeah.
It is evident I'm not on the way there. But I really try to make more and more, to get more singles out, and in the process to learn this very fine and interesting and complicated art of creating music, creating, producing,
Mm.
mixing music. Something I started doing only so little time before, and I really hope that with time I will have enough knowledge and skills to get more and more quality production, and eventually get maybe some albums as well. Actually, now I almost finished working on the first EP, and this EP actually is not is me composing poems of a good friend of mine who writes very differently from what I do, from the way I do. He writes way darker, way heavier, and very hard to read even. And I simply so much appreciated his arts, his poetry. So I said, okay, let's try and appreciate it this way. So in a month or two, I hope, maybe less, I'll have this EP out, and it's going to be in very different styles because these lyrics weren't mine. So I was reading them, and they took me to all sorts of direction, some post-punk, some rock, some metal, or some at least heavier stuff. But for me, the hardest part of this music production is to finish the song. To say, okay, it kind of sounds okay now. You don't have to work it again or re-record it or replay it or something like that. And it's actually something I was talking to a person, with James. Yes.
He's very good at that stuff. Yeah.
Yes, but also he a person who really knows how to do this stuff, and kudos for him what he's done with your song. It's a really beautiful rendition, and it's really cool to see how this remix elevated it and put it in a new skin, and it's very cool. And so even a person like him who knows what he's doing in the mixing table, he says, okay, listen, you don't have to do the best thing the best thing. You just have to put it out eventually. And also he said there are so many great songs who sound awesome and they are mixed not well, and if you try and fix them and mix them well, they will not sound good at all.
Exactly.
And it is a thought I really appreciated. I think it was a really good thought. And while I try to calm myself with saying, look, yeah, my art is raw, my art is authentic, it's okay to be human. It's I still want to improve and go and make a better production, and I really want to know for myself to be okay with, okay, this song is pretty much done. I can go on with it. And I do try to put singles to be kind of relevant still, and not to do something big. While still pretty much nobody knows me, and then disappear for a year. I prefer to have a single every month or so, and also in the process I try to create all the time as much as I can, and as much as the routine our routine allows to, and I hope that from one release to another I'll learn something and I make some kind of progress. So I think it's for me like better to go in small steps, but hopefully getting better from one to another than have a huge leap and then disappear for a while.
Yeah, actually it was about acting, but I heard an actor say, what's the most important thing about acting? And he said that you're doing it, which I love, and I had heard about being a musician. I've mentioned this before that I was always kind of I'm not a musician. I think a musician is like someone who plays violin in the orchestra or something like that. But someone said that their definition of a musician was someone that can't not make music, which I definitely fall into that category. And it sounds like you do too, So here we are. We'll keep on going.
Yes, I think that I began as a poet, if I can talk about it. So, but lately, my inspiration and my muse, my creativity, it goes more in terms of sounds. And not less words, and I have more and more music, and I go back to my notebooks and say, okay, we can match this music with this lyrics and stuff like that, and you're totally correct. Inspiration keeps on coming. I remember as a teenager, I wrote a lot, and I don't know if it was any good or not, but it was, as I said, it was plenty. And like I used to write write a poem down, and now another one. It's like I'm not going for quantity, but it just keeps on going, keeps on coming out. And if you don't write it down, it will eventually go away. And unfortunately, and I remember you saying this in one of the earlier previous episodes, how you can go and make a music really, really fast on your phone.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't have this. I don't have this ability. No, don't have these skills, maybe yet. And I feel that a lot of what I don't write down, don't go and record, will eventually disappear and elude you eventually.
Yeah.
So there is no probably other way than go on and do things. Otherwise, it's just will go and disappear.
Yeah. And what can you talk a little bit around where you lived in Israel? Is like as a poet, do you have like poet slams and things like that where you go and read your poetry, and or what is the scene like there for that?
I think the first what is the scene now? I truly do not really know.
Okay.
But there was a very interesting thing that when in the year 2000, 1999, 2000, I was in my late teens then, and I was really writing a lot. There was a site that called Stage COIL. It's like the new stage. And it was a home for people who wrote things, poems or short stories. And it was a really very cozy, interesting, cool home for people who wrote poetry or something else, wrote whatever they wanted. And for a couple of years, for maybe 2 or 3 years, it went on as a really cozy and cool community. And they used to have poetry nights. They call them stage nights. They used to go to some theater and people could enroll and sign up and read their poetry. And also someone who would make music on the site also played and performed musically. And it was really, really beautiful, really interesting, especially to me as a teen who didn't have the audience before or the opportunity to write something and tell it to everyone. And this the ability to publish it, not to write something and put in your drawer, and to publish it was really interesting. Unfortunately, with like with many other things, whenever something becomes big, it becomes too big. And it eventually becomes not as good as it was. And of course, the site held its really quality, great years for maybe 3-4 years, really magical years, in my opinion. And eventually, it kind of withered away. But it was really cool. I am sure that there are poetry nights and stuff like that, like Poetry Slam, etc. I'm sure. I have to say I was not in one in the last I think a decade, unfortunately.
Yeah. And what about do you intend to play out live at all, or are you just going to focus on recording for a while?
I'm not sure that I'm the performing artist material. As I said, I was in a band. I was in a band in high school, but we played really small gigs, really modest gigs, and we never made it big. The only times I take the stage is when I have to lecture someone, to give lectures, work-related lectures. But be it cool as it is, but it's still very not the same. I'm not sure that at least now I am able to take the stage and really give something like a quality show to the people and who will be watching this. So I really enjoy making music. I really enjoy hearing people that saying, okay, it's a good song, it's an okay song, it sounded okay. I really enjoy this part as well. But with the technological advances that we have now, we can stream. We can share, we can do things that we could not imagine like a decade or two ago. Yeah. So this is huge, and I think nothing will ever replace live performances. This is a totally authentic and really an experience that stands on its own. Nothing will ever replace it. A very good evidence for that would be live concerts on COVID during COVID lockdowns, where a band recorded and played and streamed out live. This is not the same, But I think that I'm not there. I think I'll be making my music and streaming it over and sharing it with people in some way or another. But who knows? I believe, I feel that I'm in my very, very first steps in this musical journey. And who knows where this journey takes me. But my goal was, for now at least, is to get better, to make better music, to make and also to have fun and get some of my poetry that I hope have some meaning, to get it out.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing it with us today, and maybe you come on the show again when your EP comes out with your friend's poetry. That could be cool.
Would be honored.
Be cool to talk about, or maybe you
Sure.
both can come. Maybe both come.
Cool.
But yeah, anyone, if you haven't heard Invisible Men, you can hear it on the Independent Artists Unite playlist. I've added to the playlist. And yeah, Vadim, thank you so much. This was so cool. I really appreciate you being on the show, and thank you for supporting the show. I know you've watched a lot of episodes too, and I really appreciate the support.
Thanks.
So, yeah, man, we'll be talking soon. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. A great pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot, Scott.
Thank you.